It is time for a super high level match of Zerg versus Protoss, and what I got for you today is a game right here on Proxima Station LE. Spawning in the northeast corner, playing with the red Protoss pieces, we have none other than Zest. And his opponent spawning in Rook's position and playing in blue, or I guess this would be, the light blue colors. He goes by the nickname of Solar. Now, both of these players are extremely accomplished when it comes to StarCraft 2. I mean, Zest, if I'm not mistaken, he ended up winning 3 GSLs in total, which is basically the highest level tournament in all of StarCraft 2. He's won an IEM, he's won a Kespa Cup, and he won a lot of smaller tournaments as well. Solar, on the other hand, I mean, he plays a lot of online cups and he actually wins pretty much every single one that he enters, it seems like. Just because, I mean, he's one of the very best Zerg players in the world, and a lot of people, you know, that participate in online cups in particular are not nearly of the same level as he is. But at the very least, he's earned a victory in the SSL. He's won 3 DreamHack tournaments as well as an MSI tournament back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. But on top of that, he's got countless victories in, like, online cups as well. Now, I know that a lot of you like hearing about prize money as well. Solar has earned roughly $215,000 in just prize money alone, and of course these players have got salaries and whatnot as well. And Zest, on the other side of the map, of course, he has earned roughly $300,000, just a little bit over, in prize money alone. So these guys, you know, basically what I'm getting at, right? With that little rambling just now, these guys are freaking good at what they do, and they have been doing it for quite some time as well. So we should be in for a treat right here. Very standard opener so far, though, from both of these players. Solar going for that quick hatchery right here on the low ground. He's followed it up with a gas geyser, and he's now also got that spawning pool going up. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we saw that pylon first, of course, then into a gateway. Then, of course, we saw the assimilator go down. Couple of probes into the gas initially, and then a quick nexus follow-up. After which he got himself the assimilator as well as the cybernetics core. So, very, very standard builds right here from both of these players. And I'm mostly curious if either of them is really planning on getting super aggressive. I mean, I've seen Solar, and actually Solar is pretty unique in this sense. He's been playing a bunch of like Link-Bane Swarmhost versus Protoss. I've not seen him do it in the last couple of weeks, but it is one of the things that he is perfectly capable of. Of course, most of the mid-game Zerg versus Protoss right now is all about the Hydra Link-Bane style, which a lot of Zerg players are currently favoring, whereas the Protoss players will usually open up with a Stargate and then transition, and there, speaking of the devil, yeah, they will transition after the Stargate shenanigans into a Robo, eventually a second Robotics as well, and they basically just try and build up that economy. Now, late game is where the real switches happen, and if we get to that point in the game, of course, I'll try and explain to you exactly what is going on to the best of my abilities here as well. Solar, for the time being, just simply building up that economy. He's just building up as many workers as he can, and this is one of the most impressive feats of like the highest level Zerg players in the game. They are capable of not only scouting out precisely what their opponent is going for, but they read that information in a way that they don't really need to make, you know, any additional defenses. Basically, we see a handful of Zerglings right here for Solar, which is to be expected, right? Because there's a single adept here. But for the most part, in the earlier part of the game, he's going to spend pretty much all resources on getting as much, you know, as much economy going as he possibly can. We will probably see some static defense going up, even though he hasn't really scouted the starport or the Stargate rather just yet. We will probably, yeah, there we do indeed see a Spore Crawler go down already. We'll probably see some defenses go down for that, but other than that, he's just going to be building up as many workers as we possibly can. And I guess the same can be said right here for Zest. I mean, Zest, he's already building up that third nexus really early on and building positioning, like for example, that little nuke right there, protected by 2 pylons as well as the photon overcharges. It does allow Zest to be reasonably safe right here, because if the Zerg player wanted to try and get a kill on that nexus, he would have to commit a ton of resources. Now, interestingly enough, I mean, we do see that Oracle going down right now, and it's flying across the map. I highly doubt he will be able to get anything done right there. We see a follow-up right now with a Void Ray. I wonder what Zest is going to do with that, other than hunt just a couple of Overlords. Maybe a drone or 2 will end up falling there. There we go, just a single one. Not bad at all, and actually, wow! That is very uncharacteristic right there of the highest level Protoss players in the world. That is a mistake. In particular, over the last couple of months, right, keeping that Oracle alive has become really important, because he may actually have to make a second one here shortly. There's actually another Void Ray queued up right now as well. We'll see. I think this one is just going to be hunting down a bunch of Overlords, but keeping that Oracle alive is important because of the Revelation skill, as well as the fact that you can put up stasis wards to really like slow down the Zerg player. Oftentimes, right, I just talked about that Link-Bane Hydra style. It needs to be slowed down as much as you can. So you can do so, of course, with the Oracle, but it's simply putting up, well, say, for example, a couple of you know, drone kills, you will, you know, basically force the Zerg player to remake those. So that's a big deal. That will slow them down significantly. But more importantly, actually, a couple of probes may end up getting killed here. Nice little peek in right there by Solar. But I mean, you can also slow them down by putting up stasis wards, right? You can keep track of their army movement very closely by getting those this prismatic, or rather the getting those revelations down. But regardless, he did end up losing that, which is not a very common thing. Now, interestingly enough, I think I know what Zest is going for. He is going up to additional Stargates. Now, the most common strategy, in particular if you're going to get +1 flyer upgrades right here for the Protoss units, is indeed that mass carrier style. The one thing to note about Protoss carriers, and in particular like Sky Protoss in general, is that it's awfully strong when it comes to, you know, just simply keeping your opponent contained. But once it maxes out, it's almost unbeatable. Of course, there are ways of killing it, but maxing out is going to be the top priority. Now, interestingly enough, we actually don't see a fleet beacon going down just yet for Zest, and he is sticking around on the Forge and the Twilight Council instead. I actually really do like this. I mean, if the Zerg player scouts this, right, and the Zerg most definitely now knows that something fishy is going on. I mean, he knows that there are Void Rays, and at least a bunch of them are out on the map. This will basically mean that, I mean, the third one is joining in right now as well. This is actually very cool. This will force a response right now out of the Zerg player. And most of the time, right, against the mass Stargate style, you'll finish up, you know, your Zergling, Baneling stuff maybe a little bit into the game. But you may also just simply transition towards that mass Hydra style, or maybe a ton of Corruptors as well. So we'll see exactly what's going on. Now, eventually, we just see more and more Void Rays being built, which is actually such an uncommon strategy for a Protoss player to go for. I actually really like it. I mean, he's forcing a transition right here from Zerg, but he's playing something completely different as more and more gateways are going down right now, as well as a Templar Archives. So I think that the Protoss player is looking to expand towards a fort base here very shortly. Now, while the Zerglings are nibbling away right there at the rocks, the Void Rays have made their way across, and they deal an awful lot of damage. Oh my god, they're gonna go on Overlord hunts right here. They are extremely strong. Now, of course, there were a lot of Queens in that production tab. I actually really do like that move right here from Solar, that it will be enough to shoo away these Voids for the time being. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that every single Bronze League player out there knows as well that Void Rays in big numbers are extremely scary. Now, I love this move right here from Solar, going straight into the Infestor. He does not have the Pathogen Glands done in time for these to have enough energy, so that's a little unfortunate for them, because there is not going to be a fungal available just yet. But Zest, if he's not careful and all of these Void Rays end up getting fungled, he can just lose this game very, very quickly. And this is one of these things that can make this strategy go south really quickly, because there's currently no detection available, and Zest knows nothing of these Infestors just yet. Storm is being researched now, of course, as well. There's more and more gateways actually being made. I mean, we see that charge upgrade. There's a Zergling burrowed here at the 4th base location, but I'm a little worried here for these Voids. I mean, look at the Infestors, right? The Infestors are trying to get a fungal off. If one of them hits, the chained fungal can be activated. Now, I don't really know exactly how many fungals it takes to shoot down a bunch of these Voids, but I know it's not all too many. There's a lot of Queens out as well, but they're not going to be able to make their way all the way across here that easily. Looks like Protoss may very well just be looking, though, to take that 4th base and not really get all too aggressive either. We did see the fleet beacon go down, but at this point, I don't think there's a single carrier out just yet. And for the most part, no, these Stargates are just mostly just hanging back. I mean, there was a scout right there. We do see that... what's it called? Contamination going down right there on the Twilight Council. A very uncommon upgrade here as well. But eventually, indeed, a lot of buildings get built over here. And Solar will be able to spot that the Fort Nexus goes down in just a little bit. Of course, meanwhile, on the other side of the map, I mean, both of these players are definitely playing rather passive here. But meanwhile, on the other side of the map, like, Solar is just simply building up that tech as well. He's going up to the Ultralisk Cavern and he's building up a bunch of Viper. On top of that, he's researching the Neural Parasite. Now, Neural Parasite, of course, a very uncommon strategy and a very uncommon, you know, ability to use, at the very least as it is right now in StarCraft 2. Maybe in about a year or so from now, I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a lot more common. But you can't take control. You can basically take control of any enemy unit for a small amount of time. Now, these rocks do end up going down. That does force indeed a ton of photon cannons to come out as well here for Zest. And Zest is just playing that super laid-back style where he's just simply planning on maxing out ASAP. And Solar knows it. Solar knows that he's gonna have to try his best to tech up as well. Because if he's gonna be throwing away army units, right, then he doesn't straight up kill the Protoss player, he's gonna be caught with his pants down a little bit later. Because this Protoss army, once it maxes out, it is going to be extremely, extremely powerful. second robotics facility, or actually, no, hold that thought. That is a third robotics facility going down right here for Zest. He's going to be able to produce a ton of Immortals, in particular once he figures out that there are this many Ultralisk out already. I mean, there's a bunch of the production tab, and I think there's actually, no, there's actually none of them out just yet, but he can be producing quite a few of them right here. And while the Zerglings are trying to nibble in here and there, I mean, this hit squad right here of Zealots and then the Archon, as well as all these cannons, is not going to allow any kind of run by here, you know, at any point. I mean, even if Banelings decide to get in, I mean, it takes like 18 Banelings to go ahead and kill, you know, a single Archon. So this is going to be a very well defended base. And as long as Zest keeps these units over here, I think it will prevent run-bys, at the very least for right now. The gold right now also being taken, however, and I mean, both of these players are just simply sitting back. I wonder what exactly the plan is, though, for either of them. I mean, Zest, he's got a very powerful army, right? He's getting that mothership right now out as well, and that's a big deal. Look at the triple immortal production. That's insane. I think he's planning to just simply max out and make a big move for it, but it's not going to happen just yet. Beautiful feedbacks, however, do end up killing a bunch of these Infestor. Of course, there's Queens, there's Infestors, there's Vipers as well, so a ton of spellcasters available. Which ones do you actually try and prioritize on nuking down here primarily if you are going to be the Protoss player? But I think that the Zerg already got what he came for. He forced that gold base to get cancelled, and he also now knows that there's really only a handful of, you know, a handful of bases remaining for the Protoss player. I think that the strategy right now, right, so we just discussed that Zest is just trying to simply max out on a really powerful army. I think the best option right now for Solar is to just simply wait and see if he can try and, you know, keep this army small. And of course, if he can take a huge engagement just like this, oh my god, where the Vipers are going to be able to land their parasitic bombs, and the Vipers will indeed allow so much damage here. It should be a great moment, but look at that. That army just got absolutely decimated. The Queens are trying to do their best as well, but the Mothership Core is here, or the Mothership rather is here, and look at that army. It just got absolutely trampled. Not a single one of those Zerg units ended up really dealing any damage. I mean, a couple of Protoss units did end up falling there, right? And it was all fine and dandy. I mean, the Banelings rolled into the High Templar, and that's annoying, but he's going to be able to just simply warp those back in, and I mean, that was a very, very good fight for the Protoss player in red. And while Solar ended up doing some damage, I don't think that that was even remotely enough. I think his best option, like I was trying to say just now, and of course I got full information right here, right, and he really doesn't, is just simply try and wait it out. Try and wait for these bases to all mine out and prevent your opponent from taking another expansion. But then again, there is a huge amount of Protoss out on the map, and if you can take a huge engagement, just like this one right here, you may be able to do a lot more damage than you recognize. Now, once again, parasitic bombs are going down. The Ultras are trying to deal with as much of this ground army as they can, and they do end up dealing a ton of damage with the Void Rays as well as these carriers. They'll be able to clean up the rest of that walking Zerg army, and while Zest's army did get picked off, a lot of his flyers are still available, and this is the point in the game where indeed a ton more do get queued up. The council right there on the Void Rays to switch them out for carriers instead. It looks like Zest is trying to max out on the Golden Armada, on the Protoss Death Bowl. That is extremely difficult to stop. If you manage to max out as a Protoss player, right, on Archon, Mothership, Carrier, Void Ray, Storm, those kinds of units, you're gonna be in for a very tough time if you are the Zerg player. And let's see what Solar's got, because at this point, I mean, it does look like that gold base will go up. Solar still running around with a lot of Zerglings and Banelings. That's a tricky thing to do. I mean, he could try his best and stop some of this economy, in particular now that the, you know, the probe train has arrived, but there's just simply so many defenses here ready to, like, you know, stop any kind of run-bys. I highly doubt he's going to be able to do any damage. I mean, the defense right here on the right-hand side of the map, it has been absolutely great. I did see some movement as well while those big engagements were going on, so I'm assuming that Solar did try to push in here, but all things considered, really, like, considering this is a 14-minute long game, really only a handful of workers have ended up falling. Now, Solar, he's transitioning towards Corruptors right now. He's actually got a pretty solid amount of Sky Zerg already. If we end up getting a Sky Zerg versus a Sky Toss army, that would be absolutely incredible. We do also now see that massive amount of static defense coming down for the Zerg player, or at the very least, it's only 4 spores right now, but I'm going to make the assumption that shortly he plans on getting quite a few more. Zealots are moving every which way here as well, while Zerglings are trying to poke into that force, but this is nearly impenetrable. I mean, this is like 2 planetary fortresses and like 16 missile turrets right next to it with a full, like, bunch of SCVs ready to repair it. You're not going to be able to break into this. And actually, Zest is trying to move up right now as well. He's got the perfect storms there, ooh, ready to do a whole lot of damage. But luckily for the Zerg player in blue, he's going to be able to get on out of there. Zealots in position here to try and run in at any... Oh, man. They're ready to jump in at any given moment in time. I was just talking that I was assuming that Zerg would shortly add on more and more and more static defense. And that does seem like it is going to be the case. Now, both players are currently maxed out. Both players are currently maxed out, and Zest is looking like he may want to try and do a bit of a move out. The only issue, of course, is that he really cannot, like, how is he going to do this, right? How are you going to engage on top of a ton of these spore crawlers and then all of this... Oh, that was a nice fungal. How are you going to engage on top of all of this static defense as well as all of these Zerg, like, spellcasters? You got to commit to the engagement. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Zest makes a move for this one very shortly. He's going to try and secure these bases more and more. A bunch of these units now also moving around here to try and catch some of the drones that are desperately mining here at the gold base location. But Solar, I mean, he's taken pretty much every single base on his side of the map, with the exception of the top left one. Zealots are going to be able to stop that one for a little while longer, but this is going to be a very weird engagement because both of these players are maxing out on the strongest army they can possibly come up with. But neither of them really wants to engage. I mean, Solar, he's been moving out on this map, right, for quite a little bit of times already. He's been trying his best to make a good move. But the question is, how well are these Zerg units truly going to do once these... Oh, man, this is going to be really tricky. Once these armies finally do clash. Solar, I mean, he wants to engage with all of these spore crawlers, right, for obvious reasons. They're extremely good against the carriers and then also the Void Ray and of course the Mothership as well. Whereas the Protoss player, I mean, he doesn't want to engage on that, but where can he really go to try and prevent that? One of these players eventually is going to have to make a move towards them. Now, there are a whole bunch of changeling here trying to keep track of this army, and I guess that Solar knows it at this point. He knows that something is not quite right. There will be a huge revelation there going down on all of these units as well as all of the buildings right here. All of that static defense. A couple of drones apparently do end up falling, and I guess that a bunch of, you know, Archons as well as Zealots are trying to make their way towards this base. Maybe a little bit of damage can indeed be dealt. At the same time, actually, a huge amount of storms go down in the middle part of this map. Corrupt is trying to get whatever value they can, and the Mothership is forced to retreat and get on out of there. Actually, all of the static defense was broken right there with these fully upgraded Zerg units. They end up dealing a lot of damage, but then again, this Ultron is going to be trapped for sure. It's not going to be able to live for very long either, and I think that this will once again be the end of this Zerg aggression. But, well, I guess a couple of probes do end up falling. Zerglings are also actually burrowed inside of that mineral line, but another base has been taken right here on the top left-hand side of the map, and I think that Zest is going to be able to continue mining quite easily, and while he is forced to put up some photon cannons, and the Zerglings will once again unburrow and go to town here on that mineral line. At this point, I mean, neither of these players really want to have too many workers either, you know what I mean? I mean, they already are maxed out, at the very least near maxing out. They want to have a nice little bank, but sitting on 80 workers is a little bit too much, and I highly doubt that, you know, you really even want to remake all too many of these probes at this point in the game. Now, of course, once again, right, Zerg is just simply trying to build up a bigger and bigger bank. He's trying to pull this Protoss player, like, thin, to try and make sure that he does as much damage as he can to eventually force the Protoss to, you know, make a move. Because if Protoss isn't mining anymore, it's very difficult to, you know, of course, continue reinforcing this army. Now, this is a very strange fight. Huge fungal growth does go down there. There is no detection available right now for that Protoss player, and that's actually a very interesting engagement right there. If Solar would have lost all of these infestors, that would have been a huge deal. He doesn't have, you know, he's got a nice little bank, but he doesn't have like a ton of gas available at his disposal right now to just simply go ahead and lose all of them. But I guess a single observer was not nearby, and I guess the photon cannon right there did also just barely not give the vision that he was indeed looking for. The creep is being slowly pushed onwards as well, and I actually do really like this move right here from Solar. If the Protoss player decides to move the entire, like, Golden Armada over towards another area, he's going to be in a great position because he can just simply lift up and move all of the Spore Crawlers over as well. Wouldn't be surprised if he's got a hotkey for those right now. But both of these players, indeed, trying to reduce the amount of workers that they've got. It's a pretty interesting concept. Initially, you build up as many workers as you can, but eventually you get all the eco you need, and you are indeed going to throw away as much money as you can while trying to, you know, also not really go over, say, like 60 to maybe 70 workers or so. And I wouldn't be surprised if more static defense could shortly be added on. Yeah, there we go. Indeed, Solar just simply puts down some more static defense right here over at his newly acquired base here in the bottom right hand side of the map. Now, Zerglings and Zealots, they're fighting every which way, but really, it's gonna come down to one massive clash here in the middle side of the map. I mean, Zest, he's already at a point where he's not really mining anymore. I mean, he's got a bunch of idle probes here, so I would love to see him transfer those. There, indeed, they do get sent over towards the newly acquired base here, and I think that this one has indeed gone unscouted for the time being, whereas Zest does know about his opponent's bases. But the continued revelation, I mean, he knows that Solar doesn't want to engage without any of these spores either. So both of these players are just simply trying to wait each other out and see where this game is gonna take them. They're trying to make sure that they don't always like fully max out either, because if you do, you're not gonna be able to make any ground army anymore, and you may be caught with your pants down if you go up against you know, an army that you can't quite beat anymore. When a bunch of zealots come marching into your natural, they can actually easily kill all of these units and all of these bases right over here. But actually, like, I mean, we got a great Aspire right now as well. We got a bunch of Brute Lords. We got a full Sky Zerg army waiting to engage a full Sky Toss army as well. Now, the Sky Toss army we are very familiar with, but the Sky Zerg army, I am not entirely convinced. I mean, this is one of those compositions that, technically speaking, is extremely powerful, but it can also be easily taken care of with a proper, like a couple of properly landed storms. I think the real MVPs in this fight, and there indeed we do see a lot of creep going down, I think the real potential MVPs in this fight would be the Spore Crawlers. If the Spore Crawlers can deal the damage, right, and they can kill a lot of these like not the observers rather, well, I guess observers as well, but if they can kill a bunch of these units and a bunch of these, you know, the what are they called, the interceptors that come out of the carrier, they will be able to just easily clean this one up. But if the Protoss player gets the storms down, right, then they manage to do a lot of good damage, they're going to be able to finish this one up with relative ease as well. And really, once again, we're gonna see a clash here at some point. Solar, he's got the larger bank. He's currently got roughly 4,000 resources saved up to remake any of the units if he needs to. Whereas we only see about 700 or so here for the Protoss player in red. And this is gonna be a bit of an issue, because even though the harassment hasn't been like that detrimental here for the most part, I mean, Zest has been throwing away a lot of these units for the most of this game. And I mean, the Zealots, right, they're doing a bunch of work, but he kind of needs the resources right now. Whereas Solar, he's a lot more disposable. Well, sadly, that base is gonna be in the oh, he does actually spot it right there. It is gonna be in the wrong position. I think that the drone is gonna be able to burrow just barely to get on out of there, and we see some poking around here, but the real battle, it's gonna happen in just a little bit. Hold that thought though, because there's actually a lot of Banelings here. I was gonna say there's probably gonna be a massive engagement here in the middle of the map shortly, because both of these players are posturing, but this is gonna be very messy. I mean, there's a Warp Prism. I think it did just barely sneak by all of these Corruptors. There's a whole lot of potential here for Banelings to do damage to this mineral line. There indeed they do start moving, but at the same time the Golden Armada is now also moving in here. There's just simply so many cannons out right now though, whereas the Zerg is trying his very best to do as much damage as he can. This is actually still looking really solid. I mean, Protoss was making a move with it right there, but these Yanks on all of those Vipers ended up dealing a lot of damage, cleaning up a bunch of the Tempest, and really, like, Zerg is just simply trying to bleed this Protoss player dry. He knows that eventually all of these bases will be mined out, and if he's been mining more and he's been taking reasonably cost-effective trades, right, cost-efficient ones, he's gonna be able to, you know, just simply outproduce his opponent, and we can already sort of see the result of that. Zest currently still maxed out, desperately adding on more and more Tempest, but his resources, the amount of bank that he's got, is not looking nearly as menacing. At the same time though, one proper engagement here for the Protoss player can easily take down all of this Zerg army, and while these players are, you know, not really willing to engage, right, and they're really just posturing against each other, this is gonna come to one big climax here in just a little while. I can't imagine it's gonna take all too much longer. The Corruptors are trying to make a move forward. All of the Spore Crawlers are also trying to inch forward towards this gold base. The gold doesn't really even have mining for it anymore, but taking a mid position, just like in chess, is going to be extremely crucial. If you get control of the middle part of the map with slow armies that are trying to make a move for it, you are most definitely at an advantage. And it does look like this gold base may very well just simply be ransacked here. A bunch of Zealots once again still trying to pick up whatever bases they can. Zerglings and whatnot are trying to engage here as well to clean that up, and I highly doubt that these Zealots will really be able to achieve all too much. But at the same time, the Corruptors as well as the Vipers have finally found a bit of a wiggle room to try and do as much damage, but the zoning right there with the storms have been absolutely brilliant. Protoss is gonna engage this Zerg player, but there are so many spores here, killing so many of these interceptors. Both players, however, are taking heavy losses, and judging by the supply counts alone, I think that Solar is just barely getting the upper hand right here, dealing so much damage with these spores as well, trying his very best. Now, of course, Prismatic Alignment is activated. It deals bonus damage against Armored, but I think that there may just simply be a little bit too much supply for the Zerg player left over, doing a brilliant job of just simply bleeding his opponent dry. And Solar, with a pretty uncommon army composition, I'm not gonna lie, he ends up winning against the Sky Protoss army from his opponent by playing with a lot of Sky Zerg. But let's not forget about all of these spore crawlers. I mean, let's have a quick look. Can I click on them? Sadly, I cannot quite click on them anymore. Alright, so I've just quickly gone back into the game right here to the point where Zest GG's. I want to just quickly check the amount of kills that these spores have. Look at them. They all have got a solid amount of kills here, and of course a bunch of them ended up dying there as well. But long story short, I mean, they killed a ton of these interceptors, practically rendering all of those carriers useless. And while they are desperately trying to produce more and more, I think that Solar has found a pretty great answer right here at dealing with all of these Protoss units. Now, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of Zerg and Protoss players in both ends of this, engagement many times where they max out on the, on paper, strongest army. But if you max out fully, right, and you don't have army anymore to make these Zealots or make these Zerglings and Banelings, the runbys are just gonna simply eat away at you. You can't actually stop this from happening here anymore. So it's very, fascinating. Both of these players first work up to 80 workers, then they try and max out on the best army they can, and then they actually sacrifice about, I would say, 20 to 30 workers, either in static defense or they just simply don't remake them anymore afterwards. Zerg, of course, can make static defense to, basically kill some of his own drones that way. But regardless, I mean, they basically leave that leftover supply to continue building Zerglings, Banelings, Zealots, and I guess for Terran as well, the same can be said in Marines, just in case of runbys and, having a couple of medevacs out to do some drops here and there. Just because maxing out, it used to be the gold standard in StarCraft 2, but it isn't always the way you want to go. Regardless, though, I hope you enjoyed watching this game. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.